The challenges in working in a country like Vietnam, which is big, 98 million people, is that the healthcare system is often quite busy. OKRA's work has always been about bridging the gap between research and real-world application. We engage in a wide variety of research themes. Through extensive studies and local clinical trials, we provide evidence-based solutions to really important global health problems, but in particular, emerging infectious diseases and drug-resistant infections.
Morning.
Hi.
How are you?
How are you? Good.
Good,
Nice
good.
to see you.
How are you?
Over the years, we've built a very strong and dynamic unit with the capacity to conduct high-quality clinical trials that are both pragmatic as well as locally relevant. When I arrived in the unit in 2016, we had about 20 members in the CTU. Today, we are over 50. And those 50 members are spread across a very diverse portfolio. We have dengue, malaria, AMR, TB meningitis, and of course, more recently, COVID-19.
So in TB research, we are focusing on how to improve diagnosis and treatment for TB patients. For example, thinking about how to improve diagnosis, we have applied new technology called whole genome sequencing of bacteria into diagnose for drug resistant in TB. And then we train people in the National Lung Hospital in Hanoi to do this.
The malaria team at WuKru, Indonesia, has long been doing research on one of the most neglected and dangerous chemotherapeutic problems in malaria, and that's the treatment of latent malaria caused by Plasmodium vivax with acetaminophen drugs. We are going to continue doing clinical trials evaluating that therapy and others, but we are also in the near future going to be doing malaria vaccine trials here in Indonesia.
For me, as an AMR specialist, a program that I am very proud of is ACORN, a clinically oriented resistance surveillance network that I and a colleague in Cambodia, Paul Turner, have together designed, developed and then piloted. And then we received a large welcome grant for it. In this program, we collect data not only from the laboratory, but also directly from patients. And we believe that that will make the data much more comprehensive and actionable. And we are working directly with the WHO on this to make sure the surveillance remains compatible. And in the future, we hope to achieve global rollout of the program alongside the current standard, which is WHO GLASS surveillance.
Our focus of research in the dengue group over the last few years and where we've really impacted is understanding disease mechanisms and then using that information to develop new therapeutics and diagnostics. We've led the most clinical trials in the world on dengue therapeutics, both antivirals and host-directed therapies. We've also impacted on the field of monitoring patients, and we've run the largest clinical trial using different fluid regimens for dengue shock syndrome.
When we first hear about the COVID-19 pandemic, we started to develop the diagnostic assays in collaboration with the Hospital for Tropical Diseases here. And as the pandemic progressed, we were able to conduct a clinical study rapidly. And one of these is the recovery trials that allow us to rapidly assess and test novel drugs or appropriate drugs relevant to the local context. I think this is really important because we don't have access to expensive drugs like other countries in the West have. We've been able to conduct several clinical studies in a very short window of time, and we have demonstrated some important findings, including the study that's showing the asymptomatic transmission of SARS-CoV-2 infection and the transmissibility of fully vaccinated healthcare workers when they are infected with the Delta variants. And these studies have been widely cited, and it has influenced the way we manage and control the pandemic so far.
The lesson learned from this outbreak, COVID outbreak, we know that with the high number of the patient, the therapeutic system will be overwhelmed and the quality will go down.
COVID has shown how expensive it is to have hundreds of people in an ICU, and you've been responsible for responding for this, and it's really difficult. But I think there is a new way of providing this kind of care, which is cheaper. And I think there is an opportunity for Vietnam to say, okay, we've seen how the West and the richer countries do this, but actually we can leapfrog them and use technology in a different way and to provide high quality care, but much cheaper.
So in Vietnam, if we want to improve the quality of intensive care, we need to implement new technology.
At OCRU, when we develop our research proposals, we really try and maximize every opportunity. We really try and apply a multidisciplinary perspective to all our research questions.
Yeah, I think the COVID is an example of how the unit come together. For example, I'm working with Sophie and Dr. Thương to better understand the pathophysiology and the immune response in the COVID-19 patient. I think that is an example of how the cross-collaboration between the groups had been ongoing.
Yeah, and also within the innovations work as well. It's very, across the group, we work together on utilising these new devices that we're developing across several of the groups.
So we are from different groups, but we have different background. So our strengths are in different areas. So then we work together and we bring something new to apply for the patient.
OCRU has evolved since 2013 in three main ways. Firstly, we've taken a bigger interest in the way infectious diseases affect populations. Secondly, we've introduced new technologies into healthcare, particularly digital technologies. And lastly, we've strengthened our partnerships, particularly with Indonesia. Well, there are things that are globally important, like emerging infectious diseases, like drug-resistant infections, and climate change. And how climate change affects infectious diseases is a very, very important question at the moment, and one that we want to address over the next 5 years. But I think there are other things that are perhaps arise from more local considerations, and that's equity. We need to be able to create tools to produce solutions that are equitably applied across the populations in which we work.
One of the elements that our team really would like to start exploring is the carbon footprint of the research that we conduct at OCRU, and for me, more specifically, the clinical trials. As some of you might know, clinical trials involves lots of single-use plastic. So there is a huge amount of waste generated by doing research. How can we find a solution?
So Vietnam and Southeast Asia are particularly vulnerable for climate change, and there are about 600 million people who are at risk of climate change over the next few decades. At OCRU, we already work on many climate-sensitive diseases, including vector-borne diseases like dengue and malaria, but other diseases like diarrheal diseases and respiratory and emerging infections will all be affected by climate change. So we plan to build on the expertise that we already have at OCRU, but also incorporate new data sets, new ways of monitoring disease burdens for surveillance, and then try and integrate the work that we've already done on climate and the infectious diseases to understand how the disease burden will change with climate change over the next couple of decades.
I think for me, it's on the lab side, technologies such as whole genome sequencing has transformed biomedical research in the last decades at OCRU and also in Vietnam. I think looking forward in the future, I think such technologies coming out like long read and high throughput Illumina sequencing will continue to play in a very important role for the surveillance of drug-resistant infections and also for the emerging infection. We also are planning to expand our bioinformatics platform to support for the automated bioinformatics analysis.
So data management at OCRU evolved in parallel to the research programs. And the research has increased significantly in the past years, but has also diversified. We've developed quite a robust data management framework that helps us in every single element of the data management lifecycle. And so we really need to build our expertise, build our capacity across the program in Indonesia, in Vietnam, to be able to support the researchers with their specific data management requests.
We can use the data to link the humans and pathogen genetics with the treatment and the clinical outcome.
So for the future of dengue research, we plan to build on the research that we've already done and in the field of disease mechanisms, and use that information to develop more targeted approaches to therapeutic trials, so target patients who are high risk for developing more severe disease. We also aim to use intelligent technologies. We're developing new wearable technologies that monitor patients better, and also clinical decision support systems, and using point-of-care ultrasound and medical imaging technologies to improve how we monitor patients.
So the thing I think which will be really exciting for us in Oxford is to be able to play a special part in supporting the units in training and the transfer of knowledge, and so that the units become more and more able to do molecular biology and use molecular tools to make diagnoses in infectious diseases.
Our vision is to have local, regional and global impact. In order to enhance the scale and generalizability of our work and research findings, we need partners outside of Vietnam, and to come together with Indonesia, the fourth most populous country on earth, with a huge and diverse range of infectious disease problems, allows us to act at scale and with much, much bigger impact.
Well, synergy means we are greater than the sum of the individual parts, and we truly are. We have distinct local cultures, we have distinct social political contexts, and we have different endemic infections, but we share the same resources and expertise.
Well, we want to strengthen our preparedness, particularly for infectious diseases in the region, and to come together with Indonesia to create shared platforms for serosurveillance, for pathogen discovery, are critical for that, to that ambition. We also want to combine our expertise in clinical trials. And lastly, we also have an opportunity to look at climate change together.
I hope in the next 5 years, the city will have very good center for disease control, for public health, and the city will have the capacity to deal with the other pandemic.
New technology is going to change the way public health is organized. But I think the unique thing about Vietnam is that it's very prepared to take new technology, and I see that in the future. Oak Ridge will continue to be the best place to learn how to do world-class science in Southeast Asia.